Hello guys, I welcome you to part 3 of our lectures on how to measure a nation's income. Now, in the previous lectures, we've had a look at what GDP was, how to measure GDP, and we've looked at two different ways to measure the GDP. That is real GDP per cap, real GDP, and the nominal GDP. Now, we also say that when we divide the GDP of a country by its total population, that gives us the GDP per capita. Okay, so it is important at this point, I'd like to draw a relationship between GDP and economic well-being. Okay, and it is a case that most economists, policy analysts, and policymakers usually use real GDP per capita as an indicator of the average person's standard of living. Okay, because it actually takes into account the issue of it's real GDP is actually deflated for inflation. Okay, and so it gives you the real standard of living of the people and not the inflated standard of living of the people. However, GDP is not a perfect measure of people's well-being. And we can see that many people, in fact, many economists have commented on this and have this same opinion. So one person whose critique I think is worth considering is Robert Kennedy. And he says that GDP does not allow for the health of our children, the quality of their education, or the joy of their play. It does not include the beauty of our poetry or the strength of our marriages, the intelligence of our public debate, or the integrity of our public officials. It measures neither our courage, nor our wisdom, nor our devotion to our country. It measures everything, in short, except that which makes life worthwhile. And it can tell us everything about America or Ghana or the UK or Nigeria or Togo, except why we are proud that we are Americans. Okay. Now, one other thing is that apart from what Robert Kennedy has said, GDP does not value many things. Some of them can be seen on this slide, and they include the quality of the environment in which we live. It does not value the leisure time we have. It does not value non-market activity, such as the childcare a parent provides at home. And it does not value an equitable distribution of income. Then the question is, why do we care about GDP? Now, it is important to note that although GDP has its own shortcomings, GDP is still important, okay? And that is because having a large GDP enables a country to afford better schools, a cleaner environment, and healthcare, etc. Okay, and many indicators of the quality of life that a person or the citizens of a country would have are positively correlated with GDP. What that means is that they tend to move in the same direction. Okay, so for example, let's look at GDP, and here I'm talking about real GDP and life expectancy. So life expectancy measures how long the average person in a country is expected to live, okay? In Ghana, life expectancy is about 64 years, okay, maximum. The average person is expected to live for a maximum of 64 years. Now, when you look at this graph, you can see that countries with bigger GDPs actually have higher life expectancy. So for example, when you look at the United States, it has the biggest GDP in the world. The life expectancy is about 77 years. When you look at Germany, it has a very big GDP, and the life expectancy of its citizens, it's well over 80 years. And Japan also has a life expectancy well over 80 years. And so this is important. GDP has a correlation with life expectancy. In other words, the bigger your GDP, the more likely the life expectancy of your people will be higher. And that is because they can afford better healthcare, okay, with more money. Then again, let's look at GDP against average years of school, okay? So average years of school stands for the number of years that an average person in a country spends in school. And you can see that countries with bigger GDPs have their citizens spending more time in school. In other words, they are more schools than those in countries with lower GDPs. So you can see that in the United States, which has the biggest GDP in the world, the average person spends more than 12 years in school. In Germany, they also spend more than 12 years in school. In Japan, about 12 years. And look at Pakistan and India. The average person spends just about 5 years in school. Okay, just about 5 years. And then let's look at GDP and overall life satisfaction. And once again, you can see that those countries with bigger GDPs tend to have higher life satisfaction for their citizens. Okay, so in Germany, most of the people say that their life satisfaction on a scale of 0 to 10 is about 7 out of 10. Look at that of India. It's just about 4.5 out of 10. And in Bangladesh, it's just about 4.6 out of 10. In Nigeria, just about 4.8 out of 10. So once again, this data shows that there is a positive correlation between a bigger GDP and overall life satisfaction. Okay, what it means is that the more or the richer a country is, the more likely its citizens are going to state that they have a higher life satisfaction. So then, in summary, we want to say that GDP measures a country's total income and expenditure. The four spending components of GDP include consumption, investment, government purchases, and net exports. Nominal GDP is measured using current prices. Real GDP is measured using prices of a constant base year and is corrected for inflation. GDP is the main indicator of a country's economic well-being, even though it is not perfect. So I want to thank you for watching this series. Look forward to other lectures soon. Bye.